Nurse.
Yes, sir.
10 years, spotless record.
Thank you, sir.
The sound of a helicopter fades in, soft, distant, and haunting. It's the same sound that once opened every episode of MASH*, the series that made millions laugh, cry, and reflect on the absurdity of Va. And on a quiet morning of May 30th, 2025, that sound seemed to echo again. This time as America said goodbye to Loretta Swit, the woman who gave the world Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan. Born in New Jersey and loved across the world, Swit was more than just a face from television's golden age. For 11 seasons, she embodied compassion within chaos, strength behind sarcasm, and a rare warmth that made even a war comedy feel human. When the news broke that she had passed away peacefully at her home in New York City, tributes flooded in from co-stars, friends. Loretta had spent her days surrounded by art, letters from fans, and her beloved rescue animals. She had often said, "The role may end, but the heart never does." And for millions who watched her, reinvention, and a woman who never stopped fighting for what she believed in. How did Loretta Swit prepare for her final curtain call? And what legacy did she choose to leave behind? It was just past dawn on May 30th, 2025, when a quiet call came through to New York Emergency Services. At her apartment on the Upper West Side, Loretta Swit, the legendary actress who once embodied the heart and nerve of MASH*, had been found unresponsive. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but she was already gone. Her publicist later confirmed to the Associated Press that she passed away peacefully in her sleep, the result of natural causes, at the age of 87. Within hours, the news spread across every major outlet. Reuters, People magazine, Variety, and The Guardian all carried the same headline. Loretta Swit, Emmy-winning star of MASH, dies at 87. The world paused. For those who grew up with her, it felt like the end of a chapter written in laughter, courage, and compassion. Her MASH* co-stars, Alan Alda, Mike Farrell, and Jamie Farr, released joint statements through CBS, recalling her warmth both on and off screen. Alda wrote simply, "Loretta was the heartbeat of our camp. She gave the Army its humanity, and she gave all of us something to believe in." Friends close to her said Loretta had spent the last evening quietly painting in her studio. The small apartment, filled with watercolor portraits of rescued animals, was a reflection of her soul. Colorful, peaceful, compassionate. On her kitchen table, they found a half-finished letter, addressed to the volunteers of her charity foundation. It ended with the line, "Keep saving them. That's how we keep love alive." Her funeral arrangements were handled privately, according to her wishes. There would be no grand memorial service, only a small gathering of friends, family, and former MASH* colleagues who had shared more than a decade of memories in front of the camera. Outside the apartment building, fans began leaving flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. Some were veterans who said they found hope in her portrayal of strength. Others were young actors, calling her the blueprint for complex female roles on television. In those quiet tributes, New York's morning bustle slowed for a moment, honoring a woman who had once made the world stop and listen. She had lived as an artist, loved as a fighter, and left as a legend. But how did an ordinary girl from New Jersey rise to become one of the most beloved icons of television history? Long before Hollywood ever knew her name, Loretta Swit was just a shy Polish-American girl from Passaic, New Jersey, born on November 4th, 1937. Her parents, Lester and Nellie Swit, were hardworking immigrants who believed in discipline, faith, and the American dream. But Loretta's dream was different. While other kids in the neighborhood played outside, she spent her evenings mimicking radio. Her career. Swit spent most of the 1960s struggling in regional theater, touring with small productions, and taking temporary office jobs to pay the rent. She performed in The Balcony, Othello, The Odd Couple, and even taught acting to kids on weekends. Her persistence caught the attention of casting directors, leading to guest roles in television hits like Hawaii Five-0, Mission Impossible, and Gunsmoke. Still, her big break hadn't come until 1972. That year, 20th Century Fox launched a new series called MASH*, based on the hit 1970 film. Producers needed someone to play Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan, a strong yet vulnerable head nurse stationed in a mobile army surgical hospital during the Korean War. The role had been played by Sally Kellerman in the movie, but the TV version demanded more heart than satire. Loretta auditioned once, read 2 lines, and the producers immediately knew they had found their woman. From the first episode, she refused to play Margaret as a simple caricature of authority or vanity. Instead, she infused the character with intelligence, empathy, and defiance. In one early scene, when a soldier dies in her arms, the tears weren't scripted. They were real. And millions of viewers saw that, amid the chaos of war, there was humanity. Over the next 11 seasons, Swit became the emotional anchor of MASH star. The world watched as Hot Lips evolved from a rigid army nurse into a fully realized woman, commanding respect in a man's world. By the end, the character mirrored Loretta herself, strong. Loretta Swit faced a different kind of battle, the one every actor dreads. What comes next? When MASH*, aired its final episode in 1983, more than 100 million Americans tuned in. It was the largest television audience in U.S. history at the time, a national moment of silence and art to painting and to compassion. In the late 1980s, she began rescuing stray cats and dogs around her Los Angeles neighborhood. What started as a private act of kindness grew into a lifelong mission. By 1990, she had become a vocal advocate for animal rights, long before it was fashionable. She joined PETA, the Humane Society, and dozens of small shelters across the country, lending her fame and her voice to those who had none. In interviews, she often laughed that she'd traded television scripts for sketchbooks. And she wasn't joking. Her passion for watercolor painting became her second career. Each canvas was filled with the same gentleness she once gave to her characters. Portraits of dogs, cats, horses, sometimes even a wounded bird she had nursed back. Stronger animal welfare laws, visited shelters personally, and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars through art auctions and charity events. At one gala, she even joked, "If you want my autograph, adopt a cat first." The audience laughed, but she meant it. Loretta's transformation was complete. The woman once known for portraying a nurse in a war zone had become a healer in real life. She turned empathy into action and fame into fuel for kindness. By the 2000s, her television appearances had become rare, but her name continued to carry weight. Not as a celebrity, but as a conscience. She was proof that an icon didn't need to stay on screen to stay relevant. Still, as time moved forward, the spotlight dimmed. And in those quieter years, Loretta Swit began writing the most peaceful chapter of her extraordinary life. By the time Loretta Swit entered her 80s, she had found what most Hollywood stars never do: peace. Gone were the flashing lights and red carpets. In their place, morning walks in Central Park. Even in her final years, she remained deeply connected to her old castmates. Alan Alda called her every few weeks, sometimes just to share memories of the set or a silly inside joke from 1973. Friends said she began slowing down in early 2025. Her knees hurt, her eyesight dimmed, but her spirits stayed sharp. She often joked that she would paint until the brush falls from my hand. True to her word, she did. In March 2025, she gave what would be her final interview, featured in T2C Online, titled Her Final Bow. In it, she spoke candidly about aging, loss, and the gift of a quiet life. I used to think success was being seen. Now I know it's being remembered kindly. Those who visited her apartment in the last months recall a serene space, sunlight, streaming through lace curtains, stacks of sketchbooks on the coffee table, and a gentle soundtrack of old jazz records playing in the background. Every corner reflected who she was: compassionate, curious, and completely unpretentious. On the night before she passed, Loretta painted a small watercolor of a dove resting on a soldier's helmet. A simple image, yet profoundly symbolic. It was her final piece. The next morning, she slipped away quietly in her sleep, leaving behind not tragedy, but tranquility. The world would soon awaken to the news of her passing. And as headlines spread from New York to London to Tokyo, fans realized something remarkable. Loretta Swit had left this world exactly as she had lived in it, gracefully, purposefully, and full of love. But as tributes began pouring in, one thing became clear. MASH * had ended decades ago, yet its heartbeat had just been silenced forever. The news broke just after sunrise on May 30th, 2025, and by noon, it had reached every corner of the world. Television anchors spoke her name with reverence. News tickers flashed across the bottom of screens. Loretta Swit, the beloved hot lips of MASH, dies at 87. For millions, it wasn't just another celebrity obituary. It felt like losing someone they had grown up with, laughed with, and learned from. Social media erupted in a flood of tributes. Within hours, the hashtag #GoodbyeHotLips began trending across X, formerly Twitter. Photos from MASH*, fan art, and heartfelt stories filled the timeline. Some posts were from doctors and nurses who said her character had inspired them to pursue medicine. Others were from veterans who had found comfort in the show's empathy and humor during dark times. Alan Alda, her closest friend and co-star, posted a single photo, the two of them laughing during a break in filming decades ago. His caption was short. Loretta taught us that compassion can survive even in war. Rest, my dear friend. Mike Farrell wrote, her warmth filled every set, every room, and every life she touched. There was no one like her. See you later, soldier. The clip brought millions to tears. In Los Angeles, CBS Studios draped a banner across their gates reading, "Thank you, Major." At the Hollywood Walk of Fame, fans placed flowers on her star, alongside small plush animals and watercolor prints of her artwork. One note left among the roses read, "You save lives on screen. You save hearts off it. Honor." Each broadcast opened with a simple dedication for Loretta Swit, the nurse who healed the world. Animal welfare organizations also paid tribute. PETA released a statement praising her. Repeated, "Kindness is contagious. Spread it like sunlight." In New York, where her apartment had become an impromptu shrine, strangers gathered at dusk holding candles. They didn't sing. Empathy and steel still lingered in the air. But beyond the tributes and memorials, a question remained. What exactly did Loretta Swit leave behind? Not in awards or roles, but in legacy. In the end, Loretta Swit's legacy cannot be measured in trophies, nor even in ratings. It lives in the quiet revolution she sparked, on screen, in society, and in the countless lives she touched. But through sheer determination and skill, Loretta transformed Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan into something rare. A woman who was both tough and tender, proud and vulnerable, flawed yet dignified. She forced audiences and the industry to see women as full human beings. By the show's later seasons, the audience no longer laughed at her. They respected her. She had taken a nickname that once sounded mocking and turned it into a badge of strength. Critics began calling her performance the emotional compass of MASH. For that, she won 2 Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe nomination, and the enduring love of a global fan base. But her influence went far beyond the screen. Actors who followed her, Jamie Lee Curtis, Allison Janney, Sandra Bullock, Meryl Streep, have all cited her as an early inspiration. She opened the door for multidimensional women in television, from ER's doctors to Grey's Anatomy surgeons. Each time a female character stood her ground in her quiet activism for animals, her insistence on kindness as a force of change, those were not publicity stunts. They were convictions. The Swit Animal Alliance, which she founded, continues to support shelters and veterinary aid programs across the United States. Her paintings, once sold to fund those causes, are now displayed in galleries and private collections, each bearing her signature paw print. And in the annals of television, her legacy is secure. In 1989, she received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, placed fittingly near that of Alan Alda. In 2021, she was honored by the Women in Television Foundation for her lifetime achievements and humanitarian service. When asked how she wanted to be remembered, she said simply, "As someone who, a piece of her lives on." For the millions who once turned on their televisions just to see her smile, she remains exactly what she was, the golden heart of a generation. But even legends must take their final bow. And Loretta's came not with fanfare, but with silence, the kind of silence that says everything words cannot. As the world said goodbye to Loretta Swit, there was a collective sense that something larger had gone. Not just a performer, but a presence. For more than half a century, she had stood for symmetry between MASH, asterisk, and life. Both, she said, are about stitching the wounded, sometimes bodies, sometimes hearts. It was a truth she carried until her last breath. When fans gathered outside her New York apartment that final evening, they didn't play pop songs or read tabloid headlines. They played the MASH asterisk theme, "Suicide is Painless." As the haunting melody drifted through the streets, candles flickered like tiny hospital lamps in the night. And for one quiet moment, the city seemed to stand still, as if saluting the major one last time. In an old interview, Loretta had once said, "You can't take your fame with you. What you leave behind are the people you made kinder." Those words feel heavier now, etched into memory, because she did exactly that. Inspired will fade, but the kindness she taught will not. So tonight, wherever you are, if you've ever found hope in an episode of MASH asterisk, or comfort in a character who cared too much, light a